Okay. So hello, everyone. My name is Priyanka Erande, and on behalf of Work on Climate, Lena, Burova, and I welcome you to today's Work on Success Stories event. In this series, we try to bring in professionals from various backgrounds who have already made their journey into climate space. So this gives us an opportunity to learn from them, to listen to them, and ask any questions if we have. So this is going to be an interactive session. And today, Kat Friedrich, who's editor-in-chief at Solar Today magazine, and Pranshu Shelat, who's a product engineer, both of us are joining us today. Welcome, Kat. Welcome, Pranshu, to today's session.
Thank you very much.
So much.
Yeah. So just before we get started, everyone in the audience, please mute yourself. And if you wish to ask any question, you can use the Zoom's raise hand emoticon to ask the question yourself, or if you wish, you can post it in the chat and we will ask it for you. So let's get started. Pranshu and Kat, can you please tell a little bit more about yourself, your current job, and how your current role is working on climate, actually? Kat, you can go first.
Certainly. So I'm the editor-in-chief of Solar Today magazine, and I previously was the editor of Clean Energy Finance Forum, and also have edited Renewable Energy World, print magazine, and also Building Energy magazine, which is published by Northeast Sustainable Energy Association. So I've been working on climate issues actually since college.
Great. And a little bit about how your job is climate job. Like, how do you explain it? Like, what do you do every day? How do you handle climate related issues in your Solar Today magazine?
We handle them all the time. I mean, solar is one of the workhorses that's going to help solve this problem. So sure. It's something that I think about in terms of reading climate news. I sort of strategize about our content and think about what we can do to try and advance the energy transition. And so when I think about what we can do and what unique niche Solar Today fills, I basically, assess our unique value proposition and think about what we can do that will really move things forward. And obviously we have, a lot of people who are interested in talking about what they've done already, but I really want to move our focus also toward what we do next. So I mean, the field is growing very rapidly. There's a huge, sort of motivation to grow the solar industry. And along with that, people sometimes have various issues that come up, like challenges they encounter, issues where people are kind of, I would say, rushing. So there's a lot of challenges that the solar industry faces on the ground, including policy challenges, supply chain challenges, et cetera. So there's really a lot that needs to be done.
Okay, great. How about you, Pranshu?
Yeah, so for me, I'm relatively newer in my career. So at the moment, I did my education in engineering mechatronics design specifically. And then with my first industry, I was in semiconductor and then made the switch over to the clean tech. I'm currently in Loop Energy as a product engineer. My company makes hydrogen fuel cells for automotive and stationary power generation. Again, it's similar to electric. It's a technology that has been around for a long time, but it never got the traction it really needed to move on and actually progress. And that's what my current role is. I look at the existing products that has been released by our engineering team, and I'll work to get on one hand, certify them to automobile standards that allows us to sell them. And on the other side, just work on product optimization, which includes making parts more manufacturable, reducing costs over time, getting new issues, any issues fixed, or implementing features by working with the engineering team, and so on and so forth, just to advance the product itself.
Oh, great. So both of you, what really prompted you to work on climate? What was that motivation behind it? There was any aha moment? Why did you join the climate space, Kat?
Well, I grew up being interested in environmental issues, and I was living in downtown Chicago in an area that would be considered an environmental justice community. And so I was already interested in those issues from that time. And then when I was in college, I actually changed my major to mechanical engineering because in the mechanical engineering major description, there was information about the fact that mechanical engineers would help to resolve energy issues by implementing renewable energy and energy efficiency. And so I was really interested in that. I had other reasons for wanting to switch to mechanical engineering too, but that was really when I got involved in climate as a college student.
Okay. What about you, Pranshu?
Similar, as it was more during the school time when you learn about the renewable energy and how it's good for the environment, and so that's kind of started my journey towards the climate tech. Although I didn't really consider this as a profession really until I saw with the current times, I saw the number of companies, or the growing number of companies in this sector that have been working towards the climate tech, and how I myself can make a actual change with profession and not just volunteering. Yeah, that was my motivation there.
Okay, great. So both of you are very motivated to get into climate. Great to hear that. So do you really, both of you, do you really think this is a good time to get into climate space? Do you think there are opportunities? What is your opinion? What do you see around yourself every day? Maybe Kat, you can go first.
It is, I mean, that's an understatement. Climate is going to permeate everything that we do. I mean, we just have to adapt. I work in my other part-time job at Hoffman Power Consulting as a senior writer, and I'm dealing with issues that the energy industry faces there. Specifically, Hoffman Power Consulting produces materials for the Electric Power Research Institute, and we write about climate for them and about resilience. And they are really shifting toward paying attention to this. And that's going to happen across all industries. It's not just going to be in electric power. So we're going to see a huge move toward that. And the need for climate professionals will continue to grow.
Pranshu?
Yeah, I completely agree with what Kat said. It's just with the time now, as the growing demand for a growing push for the greener economy is underway. There is more and more support available as well, which wasn't existing before. And some of the fields out there which are not very scalable to consumer level and which require a heavy capital investment upfront, like the hydrogen field, for example, the one that I'm in. Never before has it seen this big amounts of investments from governments, from large investment firms, venture capitalists, in terms of developing the infrastructure required for the field to develop. Generally, these are the things that don't get driven by the customer demand, but needs existing infrastructure for the demand to happen in the first place. And that's now is when that's happening. My company, Loop Energy, it has recently started its manufacturing or the production capabilities, but around 2010, when it was still in a technology development phase, it did have to turn its lights off during the recession because there was support available, and that is now changing. So we went from like a 10 people company to a more than 100, because now is the perfect time to get into this.
Okay, great. And before you started your current role, I see Kat has like a huge inclination and background in environmental space and etc. But did you exclusively wanted to work in climate? Was it like I wish to do this, or I will not take any other job but this one, or in this space? Was it like this?
Not for me. I mean, I am open to writing about engineering topics that are not just climate related. And specifically, I say that I write about engineering, technology, energy, and sustainability. And so those are all things that I can potentially cover. And as a result, I have to read news on a variety of topics. But actually, the average journalist writes about 4 beats at once, or at least 4 beats in parallel. So that's actually not uncommon for people to cover more than just 1 beat.
Okay. What about you, Pranshu?
For me, it was absolutely that I wanted to get into climate tech. My first stint was in semiconductor, but that was, of course, the first job out of university. And even though I stayed there longer than I would have liked, I would say, since I already had that job, I wasn't too worried about finding the job immediately and take any job there. So I, in fact, only applied to 3 jobs, got accepted in 2 of those, and took the Loop Energy. Of course, those 2 were competitors, so it was a big sell.
Yeah. Oh, great.
But yeah, it was purely climate tech, nothing else.
Okay. Okay. Lena, you take over.
Yep. I guess, Kat, since we're on this series of events, we're trying to share with people someone's path to get and work on climate. Could you please describe your approach to looking for jobs in climate? How did you get your current job?
Well, it's actually kind of difficult finding jobs in the writing field. I mean, compared to some other fields that are out there. Like when I was in mechanical engineering, it was much easier for me to find work. So I've actually kind of honed my approach over time. And what I do is I look at, LinkedIn, Indeed. I also look at a bunch of professional groups on Facebook, LinkedIn, etc. So I also actually look for jobs on Twitter and subscribe to a Twitter jobs newsletter for journalists. And so actually I subscribe to more than one. And so those are all places that I could potentially find things. I also look in Slack chats. So there are a lot of different places where you can see a job listing. It's not really very well coordinated as far as where they show up. They also show up in other newsletters as well.
Thank you, Pranshu.
Okay, for me it was slightly different experience, just because so far I've always been in the more of a hardware engineering field. It has more to do with being somewhere in person, and that is why the region that you are located in plays a big part. So for me, it was more, I look at if I were to stay in one location or a location is a constraint, then I would start looking at the industries prevalent in those regions, and then try to connect to people on LinkedIn just to talk to them, just get your connections in slightly. But the reason I say this is that's how I got my job. So me putting an application in for the job was probably like 10-20% of the effort, but the rest of it was just connecting to the people, talking to them, and trying to find a second-hand, third-hand connections into the company and just having a conversation with them. Although I would say this is very specifically to the companies that have a physical location and is for hardware engineering. For companies that can have remote work available, I wouldn't be the best person to comment on that, to be fair.
Thank you. Are there any misconceptions or misgivings people have around work on climate in your domain specifically? Pranshu, I guess, yeah, that's a question for you first.
Yeah, I'll start this one. So to be fair, being in BC, it's a bit easier than most of the other regions to be in the climate tech. A lot of widespread support already exists towards clean tech, and the people here in general value this sort of work. That being said, Burnaby, the city where I'm based in, my company is based in, has roots in hydrogen development for such a long time that it's one of the major drivers of the industry. So in my particular field, I'm quite I don't think there are any misconceptions here, but I know that there are quite a few locations or regions out there where there's people do frown upon, or they are skeptical of this industry. Yeah, I don't have any more comments on that one, to be fair.
The Society of Environmental Journalists has talked about the importance of maintaining the distinction between environmental news and environmental PR. And that's something I wanted to mention as a misconception that people have, which is that sometimes people will think that they can sort of, without thinking about conflicts of interest very well, mix, for example, doing advertorials for fossil fuel organizations with doing an environmental news project or something like that. I'm going to keep confidential who was doing that, but specifically that type of issue can come up. And so another thing is that you can have PR gigs that are in conflict with your, with your media work. And there's also a lot of pressure to move into PR. Specifically, the work that I do at Hoffman Power Consulting is actually, I would consider research. I'm not doing media outreach or, working as a publicist. So I don't have any conflicts of interest where I would be trying to do PR to a publication that I might want to write for. That's where it can kind of get messy, where if you're trying to promote the interests of the organization, and then you're also trying to do news in this space. So basically, people just need to think about how to keep their conflict of interest situation well organized so that they're not having any issues come up. and also think about their political views and make sure that they're, taking on gigs that are well aligned with their political views and social views.
Yeah, and maybe for that reason, some people just don't go to cover environmental issues because they're clearly conflict of interest there for them. If it was there, was there valuable contributions that work on climate specifically did in guiding your job search or getting your current position?
I was just using the other websites that I mentioned.
For me, I had just joined the community around the time that I was looking for the job. So I wouldn't say for this instance, but I have been following up the Slack channel after that, and I do realize that had I joined this channel early, I would have gained a lot of information beforehand. So not for this particular instance, but overall, I do find this as a very rewarding, meaningful channel community.
I agree. I really like the Work on Climate online community. I find it very useful for other things. And actually, I look for story ideas there and, look for I would say, places to make connections. So I feel like I definitely learned from it and it's very useful to me.
Okay, and do you have any advice for fellow Work on Climaters in their job search in climate? What would be your general advice, and maybe given some misconceptions, how would you approach some of them?
Okay, so one thing which while I started my job search, I realized that yes, while a little technical background is necessary, and I think I would also I'm also trying to answer Kai Wong's question here in the chat, is that yes, while a little bit of technical background is useful, a lot of the companies, especially the one that I deal with, which are more hardware based, face the same issues as most of the other industries out there regarding supply chain, sourcing, finding the right engineering talent, advancing the technology. So it's not really that big of a barrier, especially in the hardware engineering side of things, if you don't have direct experience dealing with climate tech, as long as you have some of the transferable skills applicable. Although if you are trying to if you're trying to learn something, or if you're trying to take education, take a course, of course that does help. I'm not undermining the value of those things, but just trying to go and trying to look for a job should be less of a barrier than one would think. Yeah,
that's interesting. I guess I think that technical experience is really important, like technical experience related to the subject matter, because that seems to be what gets me in the door a huge amount. That really makes a huge difference for me. So I would say that knowledge of the subject matter is really important. Also, of course, having a good skill set as far as your specific specialty. In response to Denise's question about meeting the job listings 100%, I would say that, you should definitely feel comfortable applying for jobs that you don't have 100% of the qualifications, because it's important to be confident and get your resume out there. I guess I would say that it's entirely accurate that people are asking for higher levels of experience right now, I think, maybe than they used to be. So there certainly is, I would say, a situation where the job market is being skewed towards experienced applicants, where those of us who have more than 5 or 10 years of experience are getting jobs more. So I really feel like it's harder for people who are entry level, or for people who are students, et cetera, to get in the door. And I feel like that's a problem that employers need to address by perhaps looking into what they can do to reduce their sort of barriers to entry.
Thank you. Priyanka, do you have any other questions?
I think I was on mute. So I just wanted to know if there are any other questions in the audience that they would like to ask.
I have a question. This is Kai Wong speaking. Since there's this quiet moment, I guess for Pranshu and Kat, I'm curious. I don't know how long you've been in your current position, but you know, now that you're in the space, do you feel that it is what you thought it was going to be? Is it sort of meeting your expectations, or you're still sort of, still looking for the right thing for yourself? You know what I mean? Because just because you're in the space doesn't necessarily mean the position is an ideal fit, et cetera. Not that something like that exists, but I'm just curious that, for most of us who are trying to make the transition, getting in seems to be like the first goal, but then once you're in, maybe not everything is always going to be so perfect. And I'm just wondering, how are you finding it so far, and how's it meeting your expectations so far?
Sure. So I would say you are absolutely correct. I mean, it's not while you enter the industry, yes, it's a very it's in the butterflies in your stomach feeling for those people who are passionate about entering the workforce. But then once you enter, you still have to deal with a lot of day-to-day issues that most of the other industries face. For me, this change was not only in the right industry, but in the right field that I wanted to go into. I've been aiming towards product management as a long-term goal in the first place. So product engineering, it's a good pathway towards that side. But otherwise, I do agree with you. Like at times, you would feel that this the work you're doing sometimes just keep running into barriers. You keep seeing delays, especially with the global supply chain disruption. This is again for more of a hardware engineering side of things. But then when you do see the company signing a deal with one of the customers on supplying them long-term fuel cells over a multi-year time frame, then that is something you feel proud of, and that's something that keeps you going really. And for me, I've been following with other news and the other sectors of hydrogen, like electrolysis, distribution, storage. There has been a lot of progress. So I do feel like the work that we are doing, or the work that my company is doing, it's a small part in a large change that's happening at the moment.
Thank you, Pranshu.
I have a response to Kai's question. Specifically, I knew that when I started working at Solar Today, that solar was political, and it turned out to be even more political than I thought at Solar Today's office. So, it really is that way. When you look at solar discussions on Twitter, it's very politically oriented. And so I knew that it would be that way. And I had also reported on solar before, so I knew some of what was going on in that regard. But I guess even though it's political, I really enjoy it. I mean, I really like what I do. I also like working at Popular Mechanics, where I'm doing news reporting. And I feel excited about all of the 3 places that I work. So I actually want to stay at all 3 of them for a long time. With regard to Denise's question about interview preparation, always prepare. I mean, it's really important to do background research on the company. And also when a company puts an ad out there, you should actually look up their reputation online, and also look at their website and make sure that their web presence and, reputation, background, et cetera, including their reviews, is something that you'd be comfortable with. So it's really important to background check organizations, and also ask good questions while you're being interviewed to make sure that the organization is a good fit for you, because you're interviewing them. It's not just them interviewing you. With regard to Carolyn's question about following people on Twitter and Slack, honestly, I mean, I guess I would say I'm not familiar with as many Slack groups other than this one, the Work on Climate one, that directly relate to this issue. I mean, there are obviously journalism related groups that I'm in. There's a variety of them. If someone wants to email me later, I can send them a list. But anyway, specifically on Twitter, honestly, follow hashtags, and, specifically follow hashtags related to conferences in the fields that you're interested in. If you follow conference hashtags regularly, and also dialogue with people who are participating in Twitter chats, that can be really helpful. So I would definitely advise focusing on conferences and chats for those. And also you can find a whole lot when you look up hashtags that are kind of specialized rather than sort of general ones. So yeah, definitely browse through that, and also follow lists. There are a ton of lists on Twitter out there in these different specialties. You can absolutely spend a huge amount of time. I mean, I could spend all day on Twitter if I wanted to. You're welcome.
Thank you.
I also have a question for you. So climate space is huge. And there are many, many sectors, and even in each sector, say solar, there are like batteries and panels and many different things. How, both of you, how did you decide that you got like solar for you? How did you decide to go to this sector, the energy one? And same for Pranshu.
Well, like I said earlier, I'm open to writing about various things in the energy, sustainability, technology, and engineering space. And I've interviewed for publications that mostly engineering focused that weren't sustainability oriented. So I'm kind of casting a relatively broad net in that sense. I need to do that because, like I said, it's common for journalists to have more than one beat. And I need to be, open to focusing on different things. For example, for Popular Mechanics, I write about physics and engineering. And there's some energy in that, like I'm doing actually fusion related article for them. But anyway, there's really a lot of options if you kind of broaden your horizons a little bit, because there aren't really enough positions in environmental journalism to rely on that as a sole source of income, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's similar to Kat. So for me, I had also been looking at a few industries, not just what I'm currently at, but hydrogen. So hydrogen on top of wind energy, building efficiency, and batteries, basically electric storage were the industries that I was looking for. Of course, hydrogen is a bit more prevalent in this region, and with a bit more, with a higher growth than a bunch of other companies. That kind of prompted me to stay here. Wind energy would have been the other big one, although there aren't as many companies here in the British Columbia region, and that's kind of why I gravitated towards hydrogen.
Thank you.
Pranshu and Kat, do you have any recommendations for our audience with regards to any books that you read and found helpful, maybe or may not be directly related to your job, but climate related, where they can, educate themselves?
So the one website, as opposed to books, there have been a few websites that has been really helpful, and some of them quite, not surprisingly, the news articles, the journalism website. So one of them I know is Renewable Energy Magazine, that I follow quite a bit and get information from all around. There's of course the regular Discovery Science and The Economist, which covers all these issues as well. For me, I have generally been following people on LinkedIn that have been providing news sources based on a specific industry. So there are a few people I follow for semiconductor, for hydrogen, for wind, and I do get most of my updates from there. It's and again, there's so much going on. Of course, it's hard for us, anyone, to cover everything, but you get majority of the updates, especially in the regions you are located in, through that.
Yeah, I'd like to add to what Pranshu said, and just say that, LinkedIn is great for following people in the industry. It's very easy to follow people without, becoming their contact per se. So you can easily send out a follow request, so to speak, and just do that. Actually, they don't need to respond. If they have posts that are publicly viewable, then you'll see their public posts and you'll be able to comment on them and dialogue with them and maybe get to know them, make some professional connections. In addition to that, you can follow news sources on Twitter. They, are using it. There are a lot of news sources out there that are in the clean tech space. I mean, there are a lot of different organizations putting out good content. I would actually recommend signing up for a lot of newsletters that are basically put out by various organizations like, accelerators, universities, nonprofits, government agencies like the DOE, for instance, puts out a lot of information by email. There are also, feeds on YouTube, like you can follow the DOE on YouTube if you want. You can, follow a variety of nonprofits on YouTube. There's just a lot of actually conference information available on YouTube for those of us who can't, go around to every conference in the world. It's very nice to be able to tune in on YouTube and view some of the footage from some conferences like GreenBiz, et cetera. So that's very useful. And then, obviously there's advantages to being able to attend conferences in person, but if you can't get there, it's nice to be able to see the videos. And then in addition to that, you know, you can get reports from organizations and they'll usually promote those in their newsletters. So if you sign up for the newsletter, then you get the reports. And a lot of information is also put out on podcasts. So there's a whole lot of different sources you can follow on audio. Specifically, I use Google Podcasts in general, although I've used other tools too. And so you can, you know, easily spend a lot of time listening to podcasts. And you have to kind of prioritize based on which ones are the most, you know, useful and important for you, because frankly, a lot of information gets into podcasts that isn't that useful. So you have to kind of pick the ones that are the best and focus on those, because it's, I mean, if I was to spend all of my time listening to energy related podcasts, I wouldn't do anything else. I mean, I'd have to, I guess, multitasking or something. But anyway, yeah, there's a huge amount of audio and video information out there. And, you know, as far as books, I liked the book that Richard Heinberg did on 100% renewable energy. By the way, Richard Heinberg has an article in the next issue of Solar Today. So just wanted to mention that. But anyway, so that was a good one. And, you know, there are some other books that thought leaders put out, you know, that are interesting to read and follow. But overall, I would say a lot of information is coming out via podcasts and reports right now.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that information. And I would also like to tell our audience that MIT edX platform also has a sustainable energy course, which you can audit for free. And you can also get a bunch of like great deal of information about sustainable energy there as well. So do we have any other questions from the audience?
I guess I'll ask one thing from Kat. If you could share some of the podcasts that you mentioned here. Okay, you're already doing it. Thank you so much.
It actually would take a long time to write down the list of podcasts here. People can, let's see, people can email me. It would take a while for me to dig up that information during our conversation right now.
Sure, if you can put your email ID in the chat, Kat, yes. That would be helpful.
I have another question, a bit related to Kai's question about the company, more about the, so when you did your research and you look for companies you want to work for, how did you decide that the company is like the real deal, not greenwashing? And yeah, what was your common approach to that?
For me, I looked at the company history as well as I talked to the people over there. So I looked through the patents that they had put in, and I saw that the company had been in the technology development phase for a good decade or so before they actually started. They became confident enough to be able to sell their products out, and that is true with a lot of new technologies that come out and which are expensive to make in the first place. So for me, I saw that they had a technology which was superior than a lot of the competition. They had spent time and effort and putting the technology development and putting the patents in. And I talked to a couple of people who actually worked at the company before I made my decision to go in there.
When I interviewed with Hoffman Power Consulting, I looked them up on LinkedIn and I was extremely impressed by the quality of their blog on there. And I was also very into the amount of reviews they had. I mean, they had comments there from 49 people saying that they were, you know, top notch. And so I was really impressed by that. That was the first time I had seen anyone who ran a company having 49 positive reviews on LinkedIn. So that was really positive to see all those recommendations, and that definitely influenced my opinion. And then I also looked at the content quality of what they produced on their website and the various reports that they had linked to on there that they published already. And what I saw was that their research standards were really good. They obviously had solid writers' guidelines. I could tell by looking. I could tell that their sort of overall social view was pro-environmental. That is, I could tell that they were not just, you know, a utility consulting company, so to speak. I could tell that they were specifically taking a strong interest in sustainability and framing it in terms of resilience. So that definitely influenced my perspective. So I could tell the overall kind of, I would say, persuasive angle they were taking and their overall kind of viewpoint. And also when I looked at the quality of their content, like their videos, et cetera, I could tell that that was solid. And it was really important to me to get a good look at the videos they were producing and make sure that they were up to snuff regarding graphics quality and that they were, you know, essentially solid enough for me to feel proud of working there. So I also noticed that their website design was good. and that they didn't have any issues with website design being clunky or outdated, etc., and that the website copy was good. So I looked at all of those things when I was, interviewing with them. And, if I'd known someone who had worked there previously, I would have talked to them too. So I guess those are some things that you can look at. Also, when you look at the actual job listing, you can look at the job listing and see sort of what their expectations are. And in this job listing, it said no office politics. They literally said that, which I thought was amusing. So, so anyway, that was good. And then with Solar Today, with American Solar Energy Society, I did kind of a similar process where I looked to see what their sort of cultural background was. By looking at the magazine, I saw that they were influenced by 1970s culture, which is definitely a theme in the magazine. You'll see, people who have been in the solar industry since the 70s talking about it. So that's kind of something that affects the sort of style of the magazine. And you see that in the color scheme, et cetera. You look at the color scheme and can kind of tell who you're dealing with. It's a Southwestern organization, which influences it culturally as well. I actually read a book about the Southwest as part of my preparation for working with them, because I wanted to learn more about what it was like to live in the Southwest. I've never lived there, and I wanted to be more kind of culturally competent about that. And then I also looked overall and kind of the quality of production of the magazine, the quality of the website. I saw that the magazine and website communicated enthusiasm, and that was very important to me. And I could also tell some of the issues that they were dealing with in terms of kind of topics that come up in renewable energy. So I could tell what some of the topics were that they were excited about. And I could also tell the professional backgrounds of the writers for the magazine. So all that stuff you can get by looking at a magazine closely. And you can also, of course, look at the masthead, et cetera, see who's participating, look at their bios on LinkedIn, which I did, and overall get a sense of the quality of the graphic design. That matters too. And I guess in addition to that, it's really important to get a good cultural read. And actually I did that for Hoffman Power Consulting too, where I specifically wanted to know what the cultural background of my coworkers was. And so I looked them up on LinkedIn and looked at things that they had said online to sort of assess that. So that was helpful. And that gave me a sense of who I was dealing with. And then with Popular Mechanics, I looked up my editor, and she's very, I would say, colorful and amusing person from Philadelphia, who has previously been a reporter in Philly as a tech reporter, actually, and then transitioned to working at Popular Mechanics in editing capacity. And so she's actually, when you speak to her, she's very smart. I mean, I could tell during the interview, she's very sharp and really knows her stuff. And so I was very impressed, and also really enjoy the kind of hip behavior that Popular Mechanics engages on online, where they are, putting out content that's very entertaining and amusing. If you look at their individual articles, you'll see that the headline styles and also the styles of the content are very, very targeted. I mean, it's very targeted, sharp, hip content. I would say more fashionable than most other content that's in this space. So it's kind of a nice challenge for me to be able to write content that's, fashionable and entertaining. So I see that as fun. So anyway, those are some of the things that I looked at when I was checking the background of these different places.
Thanks, Kat. It does sound like a extensive background research.
All right, so I think we've covered all the questions that were asked, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, we are at the end of our session today, and I would like to thank Pranshu and Kat, both of you joining today and sharing a huge deal of information with us. It's really helpful. And those of you in the audience, thank you for joining us today. And as you all know, Work on Climate is a 5013C nonprofit. So if you really liked our work, please consider donating us today. We have this QR code, or you can go to our website, workonclimate.org/donate. And your support is going to help us get 100 million people, 100 million professionals into the climate workspace. That is our aim. So consider supporting us if you really liked our work today. And one more time, thank you so much, Kat and Pranshu, for joining us. Thank you for your time, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
So much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just a quick note on the survey, we also have a 3-question survey, very short survey. If you have any suggestions or feedback, do let us know through that. It's in the chat.
Perfect. I see it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Have a good day.